everyone. I'm Deb Lester.
And I'm Sarah Lester. This is episode 6 of the Lester Leadership Series. This series explores AEC industry trends, highlighting the voices of industry leaders and examining how COVID-19 has impacted jobs and the workplace.
In this segment, it is our pleasure to highlight 2 female leaders who have spent much of their careers in the AEC industry. Today, we have the honor of speaking with Stacey Shepard and Sherry Sweitzer. Stacey has almost 30 years of experience working in corporate, political, and policy-oriented environments. As Vice President of Growth and Strategy for Jacobs Federal and Environmental Solutions, Stacey is responsible for driving overall client management and business development across a diverse portfolio of opportunities, leveraging corporate thought leadership, and establishing a comprehensive vision focused on creating revenue-generating, innovative client solutions across military services, intelligence, communities, and federal civilian agencies. That is a sentence. Stacey is a wine lover, has done wine tastings in 5 of the 7 continents, and a lifetime athlete, sports aficionado.
That was a great introduction. And Sherry is an energetic and highly versatile sales and operations professional with a diverse background in almost all markets in the engineering, construction, and maintenance business. She possesses an innate ability to inspire and motivate others through effective coaching and team building on a global basis. She started Jacobs as a contracts manager as the only professional female employee at the corporate headquarters at the time. At Jacobs, she moved through contracts, federal pricing, federal marketing, VP marketing and communications, VP infrastructure operation, VP infrastructure sales, and VP global sales. Sherry currently works as the Vice President of the Western Region for Lester National. Sherry loves animals. She has a degree in zoology, has 4 dogs and a number of fun creatures in her house, and loves scuba diving.
We are so excited to speak to you both. Besides being 2 of the few women leaders in the industry and colleagues working for different companies, you are also good friends, which makes it really fun to have you both here. Welcome. It's so great to see you. And our first question, starting with Stacey, and you both can speak, walk around the question, is the AEC industry has traditionally been dominated by men, as you can see from your history. Stacey, what steps can the AEC industry do to attract more women to the industry?
Yeah, I'll highlight 3 things. So first of all, start young. Focus on getting girls interested in STEAM, and I do deliberately add the A to that. Get them, just thinking about the wonders of, math and science and all of those things. That lends itself to a great career path ahead. The second is establish mentorships and coaching for young women who are starting out in their careers, and be a role model and hopefully represent an inspirational and supportive example. And then the third is, as leaders and managers, create options for establishing a balance with work, family, other important factors, as everyone has their own vision of what that really means.
Wow. Yeah, that's great.
Right. And I was thinking education is the primary, area that we really need to get in with the people young, high school, even junior high school. I think if people understood how broad an array of opportunities are available to them in the AEC industry, they'd be surprised. And interesting, a silver lining that I think from COVID is that I think the work-life balance can be a block for a lot of women moving into this industry, because it's a lot of hours. It's a lot of hours day after day. And if you don't have to show up at the office every single day, and you can balance, motherhood, life, all that together in a better way, I think that'll be more appealing for more women to join the industry.
That's great.
Yeah, when we've asked this question to other women, mentorship seems to be a big one. Seeing someone who looks like you in an industry might encourage you and inspire you to join it. So
you 2 would be great mentors.
Yes,
actually.
Definitely.
We'll put you on the list.
Yeah. And so the next question is for Sherry, but Stacey, feel free to jump in. In your view, what qualities and attributes does it take to be successful in the AEC industry?
I would say resiliency, if I could say it, I would say it. Resiliency and flexibility are very, very important. You need to stay technically astute too, because there's a lot going on in the industry all the time with new ideas, new platforms, software platforms. And although you need to stay astute, the industry actually is fairly slow to adopt it, but you do need to be aware and pushing those agendas. Stacey and I have both worked in the sales side of the house additionally, which I think puts an onus on you to really understand politics as well. You need to understand what's pushing the funding agenda, what's going to happen if somebody different gets into office versus this, who's on which side of each different issue. And so it's just constantly staying educated, but you do need to be very flexible because things change constantly. I mean, COVID was a perfect example.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think those are great points. I'll fold in and just say, to be successful in the AEC industry is probably similar to any of the others, right? So if you pull back and strong listening skills to understand client challenges, innovative problem solving, right, is how can you address and take technical solutions? Although I find that, I always say, okay, we're problem solvers and 15% of the problem is really technical and we know how to resolve that. 85% is people, right? Working with people, communicating with people, understanding boundaries and reticence or, closed-mindedness and getting people comfortable. You have the right leadership and you can really accomplish anything. And then also set exceptional standards for performance and execution. Recruit the best and support networks that retain them. So I think that's pretty much across the board.
Wow, those are really great insights. I mean, so the people piece of it, you think of engineering, kind of the whole engineering, construction, architecture as being very technical. And the fact that you just brought people skills and that is kind of what you're lifting is really important for us to know. And it also is it's special for recruiting because I believe that young people looking at the industry and perhaps women thinking, oh, this is really not my wheelhouse because it's not incorporating some of those awesome communication skills and people skills. So fantastic. Well, Stacey, I'm going to continue with you. If you were starting out in the AEC industry, what would you do differently to further your career goals?
Well, when I started out my career, we didn't have formal mentoring. It was mostly male dominated. I learned early to just develop my instincts and essentially just figure it out, right? There wasn't really a lot of structure or guidance. So I would say the developmental process was inefficient. I figured out my own way and I looked at people to emulate. I wish I had the access available today to absorb and learn from senior leaders in the way that we enable this. And to really develop a career path. So, but that said, to the point that you just made, I didn't initially pursue a technical path. And so I think industry perceptions were that you had to have licensure to be successful. But I essentially proved to myself and others I was just as capable in business and people management and looked at devoting the time and diligence to prove myself. So in the end, I think my broader background provides an enhanced perspective. So we talk a lot about IQ versus EQ. Now they're even talking about AQ, which is your agility quotient. So how can you adjust as the pace of technology and the pace of change is accelerating? So it takes different skill sets. So I would encourage people that come from all different backgrounds. If you're passionate about that problem solving and bringing people together and leveraging technical capabilities. The takeaway is you've got to leverage what you've got and use it to your advantage.
Yes, I have similar experience in that I just kind of followed my nose. My education, I studied to be a veterinarian. So I was told regularly when I walked into Jacobs that I was non-technical, which I found a little insulting as a scientist, but I wasn't an engineer. So, I wasn't technical. I didn't find that to be too much of an impediment for a lot of the jobs that I did, but, because I stayed more on the marketing, BD, financial path. But that I was in an operations management role for about 4 years. And without the mentorship of some of the executives in the organization, I wouldn't have been accepted in that role. But they took a chance on me because they were trying to groom me and fully, vet out my background. And so had I walked in with that engineering degree, it would have gone a long way. But, as Stacey says, you can go in and, you fake it a little bit, you make it. And so it worked out really well. And doing that role really helped me in my career because I saw things from a completely different perspective that I hadn't experienced before. And so, yeah, And one thing I think you've done really well, Stacey, that I never did do was going on to get your PMP and some of the other things that you've done. I should have done that, but I never took the time, particularly when I was traveling so much. But I think that really helps your credibility as well.
Yeah, and I'll comment on that it's like before you had like a couple of initials behind your name. It's like all of a sudden you're somehow smarter or more capable when all the things you were doing before. But don't let that hold you back. I mean, Sherry has been incredibly successful in her career and being able to touch a wide variety. And I also had kind of my own path of not a traditional access. I often say like, in the AEC industry, right, you have the fingers that are like the architects and the engineers, and they're all aligned. But you need the thumbs, you need the asymmetrical thinkers to really make the hand work and to be optimized. And so I always say that when I'm doing recruitment and when I'm doing job interviews, that I always look for the thumbs.
That's fantastic.
We need more thumbs.
We need more thumbs.
More thumbs.
I'm a thumb.
Yeah, me too. So kind of this is, jumping off the previous question, and this is a interesting question for me and for younger women. What advice would you give a young woman looking at this career path or just getting her foot in the door?
Sherry, do you want to start?
This can be both to Sherry and Stacey. Yeah.
I think go for it. It's a really good industry to be in. There's a huge amount of diversity in terms of what you can do. I mean, I think a lot of people think you have to be super technical. And I watch a lot of engineers, and because, I'm sure Stacey's experiences too, but when you're working in the BD and sales side, I used to call them disillusioned engineers. They'd go into the field and be like, oh, is this really what I'm going to do day in and day out? I'm not sure this is what I signed up for. But then you come to find out that there's a whole nother path where you can be much more social. You can get out and network and provide these solutions and listen and learn from your clients. And even, I've been very pleased to see that a lot of administrative people can do very well in this industry too. And when I'm bringing in administrative people, I might particularly if they're outside the industry, I'll say, keep your eyes and ears open, because there are great positions. You could get into document control, start a path in project controls. And these are all very professional careers that also earn a lot of money, and so, and they're in high demand. So, and I did want to go to your point about mentorship, because that is extremely important. It was important in my career. And I have a couple of mentees myself right now. And I think that it helps them a lot. And, it helps me a lot too. I find it really rewarding, and spending time with younger people keeps me connected into things that I might not have been thinking about otherwise. And so each one of these encounters, when I get to spend time with my mentees, I feel great when I leave, because I've gleaned something, and they've given me a cool little network of young people that I like to hang out with. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's something that I've placed more and more emphasis on. I feel like, you need to pay it forward, and you need to make sure that you're leaving a legacy that's going to be able to sustain, because at some point I'm not going to want to be working anymore. So I would, just to build upon what Sherry was saying, is I think I would advise young women to allow yourself time and introspection. And I mean that, right? To figure out what really drives you. What are you passionate about? What are you good at? And when you get up, I mean, you're spending more hours in the day focused on work than on family or friends, or Lord knows, even sleep, right? So make it count. And then the second thing would probably be, don't be discouraged when things don't appear to work the way that you think that they should, right? It usually turns out for the best, although you can't see it at the time. And I think women are very much more demanding of themselves and set higher personal expectations than others do. So, I think sometimes to be able to continue to push. Somebody gave me the words that, and I just love this. It's sometimes no just means not yet. Mm-hmm. And so, no doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just may mean not yet. And so what sort of experience, what sort of background, what more do you need? What are you lacking if this is something that you really want to do? And then focus on that to get yourself kind of training, exposure, experience, or other things to help move you forward.
Wow. Great advice
Yeah,
for
that's
everybody.
wonderful
Yeah.
advice. Yeah.
Wow. Well, so next question is, now that we're looking at this fourth potential wave of this pandemic, it isn't seeming to go away anytime soon. We're all doing, we actually need to use that AG or AQ, agility quotient right now. How has COVID changed the way you work? And we've asked this in all of our interviews for you to give us the roses, thorns, and buds, what you like, what you don't like, and what you can bring with us through this COVID experience. What do you want to bring to the other side of it, whatever the other side looks like? And we'll start with Sherry.
Okay. So from a, just not even related to the industry, I think probably one of the most important things that it's brought to light with me is I have a very different way of approaching people than I used to. It's much more kid glove than it used to be, because you just don't know how this is impacting people. You know, you've got people like me, I'm rattling around in my house with my dogs, and, you know, I don't really have any other company, and they're really cute dogs, but they're not great conversationalists. And then I know I've got friends who have way too many people living in a small space, and they're driving each other crazy, and you just don't know where people are. And it's such a choice driven situation that I'm just much more careful and sensitive to how people are feeling and doing than I used to be. I feel like when COVID first hit, we didn't know how to, I mean, we learned Teams and Zoom really fast, but it was a really strange, I don't know if this happened with Stacey, but I was working like 12 and 15 hours a day. Everybody was filling every single slot. You had to start fitting in, you know, 15 minutes for lunch. I need a break to use a restroom. And it was kind of ridiculous. And then as we started to adjust, I think the goodness of it came out that we could actually, you know, have a better blend. We weren't on the road commuting as much. We weren't using as much money in gas. We didn't need as many clothes, that's for sure. I did, however, wear out all of my pajama bottoms. There's been a big run on those in my household. But so I think that that's good. Now, from the bad side, it's of course we're social creatures, and I'm just now starting to get out to some CMAA events, and it was really nice. We couldn't decide on masks. We kind of had them halfway on, halfway off, and then finally we gave up. But you know, it was really nice to be out with people again. I do think you get better solutions when you're collaborating. I mean, this is a collaborative environment, but it's not the same as being in a room with a whiteboard and flip charts and pinging off each other. And of course, there's nothing like breaking bread with somebody to really get to know them. And so those are just some of my general thoughts. I'm sure Stacey has some more.
Sherry, I think your points are absolutely spot on. You know, I think mental health has been a huge issue that people, you know, who are dealing with a lot of different things, and we didn't know, right? We didn't know if they were dealing with family members that were severely impacted. Being an extrovert, I struggled with lack of personal interface, but I also know friends of mine that are introverts, and it was exhausting for them to be on Teams, like leaning into the video camera. And it was literally, you know, 15 hours a day. And at the beginning, it was 7 days a week. And then, you know, it just wasn't sustainable. It was funny that, you know, I live in the DC area. And as meetings were starting to actually take place in person, and I'm so used to like, 9:59, bloop, go into the next 10 o'clock meeting, totally efficient, right? I'm like, I need to count like 30 minutes going into the city, 30 minutes coming out. I'm not going to be able to be on this meeting. So, you know, it really caused me to pause and look at how I was spending my time. And did I need to be on that call? Because accessibility is an enabler, right? So you can have 20 people on the call. Do you need 20 people on the call? Or maybe you need 3 and you just need to report out. So I think on the one hand, it helped to promote inclusion and also diversity, because it was super easy just to add younger people or add people that are not usually on a project team, because you don't have to fly them in. So that's the benefit. It also meant, I think to Sherry's point, you didn't have to get on a plane, or you paused and said, should we really be putting somebody on a plane to go all the way there for a 3-hour meeting and come back? So I think it forced deliberation. So, you know, being very conscious about decision making. But let me just do a big foot stomp on Sherry's comment. You know, if you already have relationships with your client, it was easier to sustain that with that connectivity. But if you were looking to build into new areas, or even federal clients who were finding their way through all the technology difficulties, it was very difficult to develop new partnerships and to really fully optimize, even with a lot of virtual platforms like Mural or whatever, tools that you can use for collaborative elements. It's not quite the same.
Mhm.
And so I was actually I hosted a sales leadership team meeting this week, and we had people there that had been onboarded during COVID, and they had never met anybody from Jacobs, like in person yet. So, I think what it becomes is it becomes the enabler in the future. But I think we need to take a balanced approach about, people trying to figure out work-life balance and what works for them. Because we've also saw 2 million women retreat from the workplace because of all of this, right? And that is not what we need. We need greater representation. We need greater engagement to provide that diversity, not just by gender, but just diversity of thinking and approach. So we need to think about how we're looking at workplace strategies, how we're enabling that, and how we are taking lessons learned, very dire lessons learned from the past 18 months plus, and how we're going to be operating differently in the future.
Wow. Well, and that to me seems like it's a whole nother segment that we could actually touch on. Because one of the reasons we like to do this is because we really want to see women in places of leadership, and to hear that 2 million women have dropped out of the workforce because of COVID or for whatever the stresses. We need to figure out ways to elevate women in every way, especially in leadership. So, we so appreciate the two of you being here for this wonderfully brief, wonderful interview. We want to thank you, and we're grateful for your time. And one of our COVID roses is that we get to speak with inspirational women like you from all over the country and provide opportunities for others to hear your extraordinary wisdom, your EQ, AQ, the thumbs.
Yeah.
So we so appreciate you being here today, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.